Welcome to lesson 2 of how to be a voice actor. Look at you, you made it back. I am beaming, right? Can you see it? I'm so proud of you for coming back and not getting scared off by week 1. A lot of people, we lose them at week 1. But you're back, so that's what's important. What are we going to talk about today? Scripts. Basically, it's kind of a review of the first week. We're going to talk about getting into character, building some confidence, and kind of how scripts work. So sit tight, grab yourself something to drink, and let's get started with this crazy journey called scripts. So in the real world, life can seem pretty random, right? Scary, unexpected, never know what's going to happen next. But in our safe little world of voice acting, life is scripted. We know exactly what's going to happen next and when it's going to happen. So how comforting is that? To kind of remove yourself from the real crazy world and you know exactly what's going to happen and know you're going to be okay at the end. I think that's awesome. It's an escape, really. So what's a script? Basically, it's a story, a group of words taken out of a writer's mind. Imagine this for a second. Attempting to convey his or her mental images and mental sounds into something that can be acted out by someone else, hopefully you, and then shared with the world. That's really all it is. And I'll tell you from experience that sometimes it's kind of difficult to do that. And we're lucky if we actors can even come close to what the writer expected to see or hear. And that's the disconnect. Writers, directors, producers, and clients can become disappointed when they can't seem to get an actor to create the exact character or sound or scenario that they've envisioned and put to words on paper. I mean, really, how do you do that? We're asking for the impossible. Until there's a way to actually transfer your brain to video or audio, we're really never going to nail it. But with that said, we can come pretty darn close. So that's why you as a voice actor should always give it your best shot. And always actively listen closely to any direction from the director. That's really her job. Many major and or subtle things can be adjusted in your performance to get you a little closer to what they're looking for. And as a professional voice actor, you just simply need to be flexible enough to let it happen, to pull it off. So let's really dig in and learn how to read scripts. But first, let's take a script apart. Let's talk about script hierarchy. There's a hierarchy to everything. There's a certain logical order and progression. And in scripts, there's a hierarchy. So knowing how this goes might help you understand why your approach matters. So basically, everything starts as an idea, and then it rolls downhill until it's seen or heard by the desired human audience. So in my career, I've actually been all of these things that I'm going to tell you about at one time or another, so I totally get it. So I can explain this to you, and here's how it goes. So there are the big thinkers on top, and these are usually referred to as the ultimate clients. These are the people with the ultimate decision-making authority about who does what and who pays for what. Probably the most important part, right? Then beneath them, there are the writers. And the big thinkers can also be the writers. These roles can be shared by people. The writers are the geniuses who transform that one-line concept into a beautifully written script that creates the image or the desire that the big thinkers are looking for, whether it's a story or a commercial or a narrative or a biography or whatever this project is. It starts from an idea or a concept, and then it's fleshed out into this big project that you will hopefully provide the voice for. And then there are the script editors. They're the folks who say you can't use this verb or noun in this sentence because it's not correct, or in some cases, audience appropriate. And we had a lot of that while we were making this particular video. And then there are beneath the script editors, we have the producers. So they get the script and then they set up the schedules and arrange everyone who's going to work on the final project. Producers might be the people who choose your voice for their script. Who knows? And then producers might hire beneath them casting directors, but producers may also be the casting directors. Again, they can share roles. It's not uncommon. So these might be the people who choose the voice that they feel most closely matches the character in the script or whatever feel they're looking for, depending on the project. Then beneath them, there are the directors. These are the people on the front lines who will probably also be in the studio with you or monitoring your acting, making sure everyone above them gets exactly what they're looking for. The right tone, the right voice, the right tempo, the right emotion. And then right beneath them is you, the legendary future superstar professional voice actor. High five. Psh. Then we roll down to the audio producers and editors. Sometimes they're the same people. They take the directed voice that's recorded and apply sound effects and other effects to the recorded voice. And really, they create kind of the imagery, the background scenery, even though there's nothing to visualize. It's what they think is going to produce that concept that the writer was writing about in your head. So they kind of put all this together and they process your voice and they do all this stuff and add music or sound effects if they're required. And they come up with a final project. So then the final mix project is sent to the client for approval or changes. And then the changes are made and sent for review. And then once they sign off on the final project, it's ready for human consumption. And that's where the world hears it. So really in this process, there's several human opinions in this giant, crazy cycle. And in some cases, you need to be borderline psychic to kind of understand or achieve what the big thinkers or somebody right below them really wanted, because they either couldn't or didn't bother to explain fully their vision. Sometimes it's really hard to explain depending on the project. But anyway, it's your job to kind of do the best you can and come as close to you can as to what that client wants, the voice or the delivery or the emotion that the client wants. So you have to kind of figure out what that is. And you learn to do that from reading scripts and from experience. So that's how that works. So everything kind of begins with a cold read. So basically you'll read a script, you'll get a script in your hands, and for the first time ever, even if you have no idea what they're looking for because you've never seen it before, you get to read the script. So if you're lucky, you'll have the opportunity to cold read the script in advance, or maybe even spend a few days with the script before you audition. Sometimes the script's super secret. Sometimes you have to sign non-disclosure agreements. They didn't want it to get out to the world, and the first time you'll ever see it is during your audition. And when you do that, once in a while, whether you realize it or not, that cold read in front of that audience or in front of those producers might be your audition. So essentially, you really need to get good at cold reading scripts, just in case you end up in that situation. It's hard, but it's not impossible. You just need to learn how to read very quickly and scan words and figure out how they all work together and quickly conceptualize what you just browsed. And from experience, you'll hopefully have an educated guess to the direction or the tone or the sense that the people who are going to hire are looking for. So it's weird. So let's try it together. Let's do a cold read of a script I wrote about 3 minutes ago. So don't cheat and read it and practice and then come back. Let's just read it aloud for the first time ever. Ready? Good, go. Go ahead and record your performance if you can. You can pause this and then record it and then come back to me. And don't forget your button at the end, okay? Okay, so you've read it, you paused it, you came back. Now I'm gonna do a cold read of this too. Now it's not fair because I wrote it, so I kind of know what's going on here. But I'm gonna read this script as if I'm doing a cold reading for the first time I've ever seen it. I'm gonna do both parts too. Man, you look so sad and defeated today. I suppose you've decided to give up. It's not what you thought after all, is it? Years of fairy tales at school and practice, and suddenly things became real.
I just can't. This is all way too stressful. I grew up in a small town. Nice people, low pace. I thought I could handle it, but it's too crazy, too fast.
Was it the money or was it the work? What was the problem?
Well, to be completely honest,
it was the toothbrush. I see. We get that a lot, believe it or not. Second biggest complaint among new hires. What if I got you a bigger one, maybe the size of a suitcase?
Well, that might work. But what about the princess?
She'll remain in the castle until the work is done. You can use all 6 of your arms to use the toothbrush.
That's fine. What about the other 2? Why can't I use all 8?
Don't be silly. If you use all 8, how will you stand? Jeez.
What's up with these really sharp teeth?
Oh, that's nothing. That's just for shredding up all the snakes you'll have to eat. Oh, by the way, did you know your hair's on fire?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
You see my button at the end there? I kind of got into it and felt it. So basically, as the author of the script, I read it with the intent I had when I wrote it a couple minutes ago. So what did I just read? I mean, can you visualize the disconnect here? It changed. It went from this, okay, it's a totally ridiculous script. And it makes no sense at all without the context of what's happening before it or after it. But sometimes you're in the situation, and this is all you're going to get. And this is your audition. So what do? You do the best you can. You just do a cold read. You try to visualize what you're reading. And from these words, you just kind of try to put together the best performance you possibly can. And even not having a clue what's going on, what it's all about, you just do the best you can. Just get yourself into it and put yourself into the role. And you could read between the lines. You can see some of the emotions here. You can sense some of the frustration. And just at the end, it's really weird. And we realize we're not really dealing with people here. We're dealing with some kind of animal or maybe an alien. I don't even know. And I wrote it. I don't even know what I wrote about. But so you know what I'm saying. You have no clue what it's all about. And you come into this thing with a cold read, and this could happen. It's just a really good example of like, what the heck is going on here? I don't know. But you just do the best you can. So as I progressed through these very strange lines, as you progressed through them too, when you read it, something strange happened, didn't it? You realize that these characters are kind of off. They're kind of weird, right? Maybe not even human. Maybe you even developed an image of what these characters might look like. And it probably changed with every sequence of line, didn't it? I guess we went through it. It probably changed. So once you develop these images in your mind, every read gets a little bit better. The story starts to make sense, even if it doesn't, and you'll be able to deliver a vocal performance that's a little closer to whatever was in that wacky writer's mind. That's my mind, and give it up because you'll never get in my mind. Your job is to really capture the essence, the feeling of the script, of what's going on, the character, the emotion, and then to deliver those lines in the way that the director wants to hear it, not necessarily the way you hear it. So that's the disconnect. You have to try to figure out what the director wants, and hopefully they'll provide some direction. They'll say, oh, no. Can you do it a little darker, maybe a little deeper, or maybe a little higher or something? They'll give you kind of a little bit of direction in terms of what they visualize in their head or what they're hearing for the specific role. So preparing. How do you prepare to read a script? So there's a number of things that we professionals do and what you should do before you set foot anywhere near a studio, even if it's in your house. So obviously you'll want to read each script first if you have the opportunity, if it's not an in-studio cold read. Silently the first time is fine. So just read it to yourself in your mind, kind of get a sense of what's going on. And the second time, read it again, maybe out loud this time, maybe not, maybe you're still in silent mode. And then read it out loud again. But now start to get into it. Begin to act out your part. Figure out where you're going with this thing. And then record it on a smartphone or on a microphone or a video camera or whatever. And then play it back and watch your performance carefully. You'll begin to hear things you missed as you were speaking or things that you might want to throw in. Maybe I could do that a little bit differently. Then you can make adjustments and then do it again and read it even better. It's a process, really. It's evolving. The more you read it, the more you'll know it and the different ideas you'll have. Hopefully they've given some direction in the script. If not, then figure it out the best you can. So many scripts will come with production notes that'll kind of help you understand the author or the director's intent. or the age of your character or some hints into their personality and maybe where and when it takes place. And hopefully a preference on how they think the character's voice should sound. It might give you something like a cross between SpongeBob and Darth Vader.
I am SpongeBob.
Like, how do we even do that? But, it's just a really weird example. But they hopefully will give you something along those lines, maybe a famous celebrity or something, a voice that everybody knows, or a delivery that's very, very famous that you would be able to relate to. And you just try to put it together and do it the best you can. Bolded or italicized words in a script may indicate something called a beat change. And that means that you'll need to adjust your tone or your timing, volume, or attitude. So by the end of the script, you'll hopefully understand why these lines were written, what problem you solved, what promise you're making, or why your character is supposed to do or say what it does. If you see something that indicated a change that wasn't marked, mark it yourself on the script with a different color or a highlight just to remind yourself as you're reading it. If you're opposite other characters, they probably, again, won't be in the same booth or studio as you are. Most of the voices are recorded individually. But here's where you really need to pretend and really believe that they're there. Even if you don't know what they look like, just visualize somebody there. Look towards them. Pretend they're there. Reflect on them. Pretend that you're actually interacting with them. And this makes your performance sound really believable. And that's where that acting thing comes in. So your goal is to never sound like you're reading, although that's what you're really doing. You need to be able to read without anybody knowing that you're actually reading, and that's kind of a skill that most people who speak in public do. They have cue cards or they have a teleprompter, but you don't really know they're reading because they're so good at reading the script that you didn't know. So as you review your first few readings when you're starting out, you'll notice it kind of sounds like you're reading probably, unless you have some acting experience. But as you develop more confidence and you develop your own cadence, you'll begin to distance from that reading thing and you'll begin to act. And before you know it, you're going to transition into that Hollywood-worthy reader, that Hollywood-worthy voice actor, just like a professional. Not always a quick process and not everybody can achieve it, but it is entirely possible if you work at it. So cadence. What is cadence? It's kind of borrowed from theater and the movies, but you'll find it in the voice talent industry. There's probably some certain voice that you love to hear. A few of my own favorites are Morgan Freeman, Mike Rowe, and Casey Kasem. I like those three so much that I studied them for years, and I now do impersonations of those voices. Not just the voices, but their cadence, their style, their tone, their delivery, and their timing, the way they speak. And it doesn't matter if it's male or female, young or old, a DJ or an actor or an ASMR performer. There's something that you noticed about somebody's voice that just captivates you. It just grabs you. It's something that you'll notice is that some of these professional voice actors or announcers or just Hollywood actors have a certain rhythm to their speech that you might not have noticed. There's something, the way that they say things and the way they stop and they pause. And you're hanging on for their next word. That's kind of known as vocal cadence. And here's great news. You're going to develop your own vocal cadence that might make your voice irresistible as well down the road. So vocal cadences, yes, you can create many. You can have your own normal talking cadence, which you naturally have, and you can develop more that you use as a voice actor. You can create a sense of drama, emotion, or involvement. The right cadence it should really turn a plain old boring script into a compelling masterpiece of production. And a seasoned cadence can capture and really hold someone's attention, like I just did there. You're waiting for every one of my words to come out because of my cadence, my timing. So what is this cadence thing really? So it's the way that your words flow. It's the rhythm in which you speak. It's how you pause. It's the words or phrases that you choose to emphasize and how you emphasize them. It's the up and down movement of the pitch of your voice in your sentences. So director, you might be in a session and a director might say, hey, can you change your cadence? So you'll read the script for the first time. You'll say something like, Bob learned he could save up to $10,000 a year on his car insurance. Imagine how happy Barbara will be. So she might say something, can you change your cadence? I want a smiling yet sarcastic voice talking about that auto insurance company. Ever since that stupid Australian lizard came on the scene, all insurance commercials seem to be the same thing, don't they? So I'll change that. Smiling yet sarcastic. Bob learned he could save up to $10,000 a year on his car insurance. Imagine how happy Barbara will be. Or maybe the director will ask you to simulate the cadence of someone famous, say like a Morgan Freeman or somebody for a financial consultant client. So varying your cadence like that isn't always easy to do on the spot. You can't always flick it on and off like a light switch, but the more you practice, the more you do, the better you'll get. And you might be able to do that in some time. So Morgan Freeman.
Bob needed a solution to ensure his retirement was safe and secure. Stuffing money in his mattress isn't always the best idea, even if you have a lot of time to think, at Shawshank.
So sometimes you'll do a biopic or a documentary and a sad piece will come up. Obviously, the cadence will drop from a normal pace to a more sad and somber, slower pace for a bit. And then you'll bounce back to the happy voice. It's weird. It's hard to explain. So let's do this. Let's go through this and you'll see how the cadence changes in this paragraph. Bob was well on his way to creating $1 billion fart filter empire. He had just pulled out of the car dealership in his new BMW when he got the call. Fluffy, his 36-year-old Mongolian wildebeest, had escaped. Bob never saw Fluffy again. He was destroyed. Soon, he closed his business and got a job loading frozen dinners at Target. So it's going to take some time to develop as an actor and develop these cadences. A stable of cadences really is what you need, that you're comfortable using, that you can just pull from and use immediately. But it'll happen. The more you do it, the more you'll learn, the more confident you'll be, and the more experience you'll have. So someday you'll be able to cold read a script and almost immediately read ahead a couple of lines and automatically apply a perfect cadence to the lines you're reading. Almost like you're in the mind of that writer or the director and knowing exactly what they're looking for. And you can do it. I do it all the time. It's the coolest thing. It's almost like you're psychic. It's really weird. I joke about that all the time. So here's the thing. You want to vary your vocal cadence. If you use the same cadence all the time, it's not really cadence, is it? It's your standard delivery. And a repetitive and animated cadence will become annoying too. So you'll need to develop a deep understanding of your standard delivery and how they differ from your various vocal cadences that you will develop as you go along. I know it sounds weird and confusing and awkward, but it'll start to make sense as you go along as a voice actor. So beats and beat changes, we mentioned that a little while ago. So in the theater vocabulary, you may hear the word beat. Since some directors and producers that you'll run into come from the theater background, you might come across this term in a script or a recording session. So there's two kinds of beats. You may hear the phrase, take a beat. This is like saying, take a pause. A director might want a voice actor to pause for a moment for a certain word or a phrase for emphasis, or maybe the impression of self-reflection. It may also be an edit point where the script could be changed to insert something different down the line, like they do that a lot in commercials. Or maybe another voice comes in. So it could be an edit point, like you're simulating a phone call where the listener can't hear the other voice. So if you see or hear the word beat or take a beat, pause for a second or two, watch for a cue from your director if you can see him, and then continue reading. So it might look like this. Bob, hello? Beat. Hello, Michelle? Are you there? Beat. Listen, I know you're there. I can hear you breathing. Look, I just wanted to say beat. I'm really sorry. So another beat you might hear is something called a beat change. And this means probably due to a change in the direction of the script, your attitude or cadence needs to change. So it again begins with a short pause, imitating like introspection or a moment of thought. And then it's followed by a different vocal cadence, a different emotion, attitude, tactic based on the new direction of the script. So it might sound something a little like this. Bob, I arrived at the party at about 7:30 and parked out back. I noticed Nick's car was there. I didn't know he was coming. I hadn't talked with Nick in a few months, so it might be nice to catch up. I rang the bell, And Emma answered. She smiled and gave me a warm hug as she invited me in. She told me to put the bottle of tequila on the bar. Beat change. And then I saw him. I didn't think seeing Nick after all that time would affect me like it did. A range of emotions overwhelmed me. Curiosity, nervousness, apprehension. I wanted to talk to him, but what would I say? And then maybe they'll indicate an emotional change, like angry. Then out came Karen from the kitchen, wearing that blue party gown I bought her for our anniversary dinner. She roped her arms around Nick and kissed his neck. So Nick, he was the guy that ruined my life all along. I should have known. Nick must die. So a beat change might not necessarily specify the words beat change. It might just simply wrote the intended emotion in brackets, like hopeful or angry, in the margin somewhere, or maybe above the lines of the script. So you just need to be able to look for that and then insert a beat change whenever necessary. All right, so ad-libbing. It's rare, but it happens. Once in a while, something will go crazy. A client completely changes her mind in the middle of a recording session and everything just stops. So the director's like scrambling for what to do. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Because she wants to get paid, right? Everybody wants to get paid. You don't want to just waste this whole session. So the client tells her to maybe, I'm just making this up, just come up with something. We're sure we'll love it. And the director's going to look at you, the voice actor, and say, hey, can you just ad-lib a little bit about the product or service, knowing what you know about it? You know, just say some nice things about it. So coming up with new lines on the fly is called ad-libbing. You'll probably be, especially at the beginning, be completely unprepared for this. You might not understand the product, service, or intent of the advertising. And if you're still new at voicing, you might be completely blindsided because you were so stressed out about getting the old script, you know, the one they just trashed perfect. So you just mastered this thing and now they're pulling it out and saying, hey, do something else. So the thing is, the important thing is you want to exude confidence. So you have to, even if you know you're going to bomb terribly, you have to at least act like you're ready to give it a try and you're willing to do it. If you don't, you may look weak to the director and it could hurt your chances of scoring future gigs. So put yourself out there and do something. Try something. Ask for a few minutes to write down a few notes and create a very rudimentary basic script, loosely based on the canceled script, but change it up a little bit. So you'll either jump back in and completely crush it and they'll love it, or they'll hate it and they'll never ask you to ad-lib again. But either way, you gave it a confident shot and you look like a winner by trying that. So some voice actors will choose to infuse some humor into a script by ad-libbing some silly lines. So I don't recommend doing this unless you're completely familiar with your director and your client, and this is going to take some time to establish that familiarity. So you'll need to know them. You'll need to be very friendly before you try this. Don't try this when you're starting. Not a great idea to ad-lib too early in your personal relationship unless you're super confident and you've got a really good sense of how to read people. So size them up, talk with them, listen to their interactions with the other, and just gauge your own behavior appropriately. Sometimes you ad-lib and you make them laugh. You could win them over for life. It's really, you never know, or you could end up saying the wrong thing and because you don't really know them that well and end up losing the client for life too. So it could go both ways. So just feel it out. Make sure you know your situation before you try anything crazy. So warming up. You'll want to warm up your vocal cords to avoid time-wasting retakes. So you're going to breathe deeply to oxygenate your lungs. We're going to talk about your voice I think in the next lesson, so it'll start to make sense why we do this. So many voice actors will move their mouths in strange-looking ways like this. Or maybe utter funny tongue twisters to loosen the jaw muscles up. So your mouth, tongue, or jaw can click and pop, and the microphone's going to pick that up. You can also sing or vary your pitch to get things loosened up. You could try something like this for size. Peas and carrots, carrots and peas. Mamala papala, mamala papala. Kate came crying because Carl couldn't come. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Peggy Babcock is my girl. She's really quite precocious. Honorific abilitudinatibusly. Uniquely in New York. The glassy green grass gleams. Hard to say, right? But it's a really good exercise for your mouth. Please pour a proper pot of coffee in a proper pot or coffee pot. Did I say that right? Please pour a proper pot of coffee in a proper pot or coffee pot. So make it your own. You don't have to use these lines. Definitely don't use these lines because they're terrible. But come up with something that just really starts to move your mouth and your tongue and your lips. It just really opens things out and gets you ready to speak clearly. And that's the important thing. Each of these sounds help loosen up your lips, tongue, and jaw. I tend to click my C's a lot early in the morning. So doing these tongue twisters kind of helps, loosens things up for me, but something else might work for you. So figure out your own thing. Some acting coaches will insist that you must stand up for voicing, for proper breathing and expression. Others can manage this while seated. I sit and I still get paid a lot. Try it both ways, see what works for you. But I've practiced, I've sat for years. I learned how to breathe sitting down. As an actor, maybe you didn't do that. Maybe you have a hard time, depends where your diaphragm is and how well you can control it. But everybody's a little bit different, but just be aware that some people are going to say, hey, can you stand up, please? And just be ready for that. All right, drink a lot of water. A little lemon water, I find, helps moisten your tongue and gums without that mucusy residue that can cause a lot of annoying clicks and pops of your lips and tongue that will cause additional takes, keep you in the studio longer, and frustrate your producer while you're speaking. So milk, I found that milk and soda can cause that nastiness, so try to avoid those. You know what? Pickled jalapeno peppers seem to work for me. They really loosen things up and cut through all that phlegm, but they're brutal to others. It could cause some undesirable things on the back end, if you know what I mean. So I tell people to avoid most juice, milk, soda, coffee, and most salty liquids, and you'll probably be okay. All right, some more acting terms. And you should be familiar with this stuff in case you're not. You'll hear a lot of stuff from a wide range of vagabonds and studios all over the globe. So here are a few of the more common terms that you should be aware of. You may run into them, you may not, but it's good that you at least heard them before and kind of have some familiarity. It makes you look a little smarter. So ADR is automatic dialogue replacement. This is where a producer records and synchronizes your voice over an on-screen actor's voice. I did this for a movie. It's brutal. The sound was terrible. The wind was blowing in the microphone, so we had to record the voices of these two actors who we couldn't get back in the studio, and I had to do a couple, and a buddy of mine did a couple other ones, and it actually turned out pretty well, but it's really hard to synchronize and get that timing correct. It takes a little bit of time. But it's a good paying voice gig if you can get it. A lot of people do this for foreign films, too, when they do the overdubs in English. Aside is a character's comment or observation, often delivered directly to the audience or orally. You know, it's like your inner voice vocalized. It's called an aside. Characterization, using your acting skills to develop the specific qualities of a character, figuring out who the character is, getting inside their mind, becoming them. Cold reading, we talked about that before. That's an audition in which you are asked to read from the copy you're not familiar with, sometimes for the first time with little time for preparation. Conflict. This is the story of the obstacles and struggles that the character must overcome to reach their objective. Important to know when developing your cadence or your attitude or how you're going to approach this character. Cue or line cue. This is the action, line, or phrase of dialogue that signals your character to speak. Mostly in theater, but once in a while you'll run into this in voice acting. Dialogue, the written words spoken by the voice actors, obviously. Improv or improvisation. Improvisation is doing a recording with no written script, coming up with lines based on spontaneous dialogue, and that's also ad-libbing improv. MOS is a video shot without sound or voices, which will be added by you and your voice later, either as a voice over, as an announcer, or ADR. It can happen. Strange things happen. Monologue, that's your speech by a character to the audience and the performer, kind of what you're going to rehearse when you do your auditions, because they ask you to pull something else that's not the script. Sometimes called a soliloquy in a play. Objective, the objective is the character-specific goal in a scene. Very important. OC, you might see that notated for some visual things. It's called off-camera. So if you're voicing a live event, a game show, or award ceremony, or even a video, you'll see OC, and that just means off camera. It means your face is not on the camera and they're just hearing your voice. And you'll see that a lot as a voice actor. OS means off stage. Some people may notate OC as OF. Sometimes it's a mistake. OS, sometimes it's a mistake. Sometimes it's not. Who knows? Pace. The speed at which you pick up your cue and deliver your next line of your dialogue. So it might say faster pace or slower pace. They'll give you some hints once in a while, hopefully. Pickup is a subsequent recording of a scene from a specific point. So they say, well, let's pick it up from here. Or can you give me a pickup of this line? It means do it again, basically, from where you left off. Run the lines. That means to do a read with all the characters together in the same room. Usually not a cold read, but it could be. It can also be called a speed through or a glib through if it's performed quickly. Rare for a voice actor, but it could happen. Sides are pages of a script selected specifically for an audition that highlights a specific character. So you might get some sides. They'll say, did you get your sides? Sides, what are you talking about? Your side orders, my french fries? No, these are your pages of your script that you're supposed to read during your audition. Subtext. These are the character's thoughts, feelings, motives, which are layered under the actual words on the script. It's basically reading between the lines. They're giving you this subtext so you don't have to figure it out yourself. And I always love to get subtext because this way I don't have to figure it out myself and make a bunch of mistakes and have to go in and redo it a million times. So this helps to develop your cadence and your attitude and your emotion. Take. It's the number of your current recording, like take 1, take 2, take 546. Hey, it happens. Some old school studios like you to say take, but most digital studios, they mark it automatically now. And sometimes it's really hard to keep count, so you need a pencil to kind of write it down if you ever run into that situation. Tempo, pace, rhythm, kind of the same as pace, the level of speed at which the scene or play is acted out. Depending on the scene or script, the pace can create a specific mood or tone to the work that you're dealing with. So there's a whole bunch more, but these are the ones that you may run into as a voice actor. So let's talk about the many different kinds of voice acting roles. What's great about voice acting is that since the roles don't depend on what you look like, you can do so many different things when you learn how to really use your voice. I mean, so many characters that you could never play in person. So it never gets boring, is what I'm trying to say. So I've played handsome heroes, wicked villains, crusty old people, a jock, a nerd, a girl, even a teenage rabbit. So the variety is essentially endless. So let's take a look at several different voice acting gigs that you could see in your future career. And you can figure out which ones you are interested in pursuing. Commercials. We know that most radio and television commercials have voiceovers. So there's usually like that background announcer who drives home the product or service. It says something like the benefits or a special offer. Maybe something like the only internet service that's fast enough for gamers like me. Or something like call now and get that second hairy monster free. Most of these are voiced by adults, but I've heard some kids read taglines at the end of certain commercials, especially if there's a kid acting in the commercial. I think I heard one for a cable company the other day. Animation, probably the most well-known type of voice acting. These are cartoons, from children's cartoons to major movies. There are constantly opportunities for real kids to voice animated characters in small productions and big productions as well. Most of the big budget stuff goes to Hollywood regulars, but there's literally hundreds or even thousands of small budget indie projects who are always looking for the next big thing. So that could provide a lot of work for you. Audiobooks right now, they're huge. Although kids as a sole narrator is kind of rare, things are changing. So the trend is seeing voice actors hired to play different characters in a story, which can make listening to an audiobook a lot more exciting. I wanted to hire a bunch of kids for my first audiobook, but I didn't have the budget. But I'll definitely have real kid actors in my sequel. Video games, huge industry for voice work in just about every genre. Adventure games, platformers, first-person shooters. Although a lot of the scripts are short one-line phrases that don't pay a lot because they're repeated throughout the game, video games are becoming more like movies with these crazy trailers that open them up and these elaborate introductions using voice actors. And video games aren't going anywhere. The industry is growing like crazy thanks to mobile devices and new platforms all the time. What about AI, virtual assistants, and GPS announcers? As we get closer to computers really talking with us, tech industry AI specialists are actually hiring human voice actors to help train their assistants to recognize and ultimately produce almost lifelike human speech. I was actually hired to speak over 40,000 words to program a virtual assistant for an English language training program. So the work is out there. And as apps and toys and even robotic pets or companions become even cooler and more mainstream, chances are they're going to need kid voices down the road to help them sound more familiar. What about corporate and training videos? More of a polished professional adult announcer gig. The corporate environment does use child voices for promotional productions and training videos to make them sound a little bit more legit. And YouTube features a lot of how-to videos using kid voices for applicable products. So the work is out there for kids on corporate and training videos. And virtual schooling and education, man, that's becoming the next big thing, and that is blowing up. Educators know that kids are better at talking with kids than adults are. Kids listen to kids. You hear an adult draw, especially a teacher. Most teachers, they're wonderful people, but they're not really trained in how to entertain. So to shake things up, they'll bring a kid voice in there, and the kid's listening to this teacher drone on about math or something, and then this kid pops in, and suddenly they've grabbed your attention. So curriculum designers, they're just struggling to develop engaging materials, and kid voices, your voice may be the key to engaging educational materials. Small segment right now, but keep your eye on this. I have a feeling this is the next big thing, education for sure. Documentaries. Some documentaries hire voice actors to narrate, tell stories, and just really keep people interested. And there are opportunities for kids to tell stories about other kids. So there's some work out there in documentaries for child voice actors. And announcing, if you're fast on your feet and you can think super quickly, you could be a professional live announcer. It's more like an MC or a DJ. Some organizations will hire announcers and hosts to MC big events like conventions, parties, sporting events, competitions like cheerleader competitions, concerts, and tons of other fun events. There's often not much time to practice and rehearse, and things change very quickly. So sight reading, improv, ad-libbing, always the key at these type of voice acting jobs. All right, so let's look at the different types or different kinds of voice actor approaches before we finish out this session. So the character actor or character actress. So I'm not going to lie, I believe this is the best voice acting gig in the world. There's nothing like leaving yourself behind and totally immersing yourself into an imaginary character. They can basically do whatever it wants with no repercussions. I mean, how cool is that, right? You become someone else. You get to live in their world according to their rules, and you never have to worry about anything because your character does all the thinking for you. Nice, right? If only life were that easy. This voice acting could be in a cartoon, an animated movie, or a short, in an advertisement, an educational program, or even a video game. Tons of opportunities for character acting. So there's pretty much three ways this can go as a voice actor. You're going to be the protagonist or the star of the show, the center of attraction, the cat's meow, the big dog. The protagonist is really the hero, but in some cases, you could be the villain. Still, you're the star of the show. You're the big person. You're the center of attention. Then there's the other part. There's the antagonist who works against the protagonist for good or for bad. Again, this could be a hero or a villain. I personally think it's pretty fun to play the antagonist because you're always trying to mess up the protagonist somehow. And I think there's a little more freedom to get crazy in this role since most of the attention is on the protagonist. But that totally depends on your director and the story. And finally, there's everyone else, the supporting cast. So you get a few lines and a couple scenes to make some magic. Again, it's a lot less pressure if you're not the protagonist or the center of attention, especially starting out. You don't want to be that center of attention if you don't have to be, because you can learn from the protagonist. You can watch what they're doing and hone your craft before you become the ultimate protagonist. And again, you might be cast to play multiple roles, especially in small budget productions. I once did 4 characters overdubbing in an independent movie. And again, that's known as ADR, the automated dialogue replacement. And that is a potential character voice acting job that you can get too. So again, don't always shoot to be the protagonist right out of the gate. Accept the supporting roles and audition for the supporting roles and the antagonist for a while. And once you're really good at those, the directors will come looking for you to play the protagonist. It'll happen. So we'll talk about equipment and technique in the next video, and that'll help hone your skills as villains and heroes. So what about the girl next door? Or the guy next door? You know what I mean. It's the real world person. The voice and the performance sounds like it's never recorded really anything professionally in his entire life. You're just talking to a microphone. The microphone just happens to be there. You don't even know you're talking on the microphone. That's the guy next door approach. The voice that you truly believe could be the person who actually lives next door to you. It's that natural, that unpolished. Focus groups, basically of unemployable people, have trained advertisers over the years that this is the voice that many people want to hear when we hear advertising. And that's why you hear so much of it right now. And they just kind of ran with it. But even that person next door voice needs to practice to be essentially next doorish, if you know what I mean. So all voice actors seem to fall into that announcer thing. We kind of become professional announcers. And we kind of force what we're going to say. So you have to take a step back from seeing, like when we see that microphone and something magical happens and our voice changes and our whole composure changes. So we become superheroes. Our chests pop out and we're like, our lungs expand and our voices become louder and more pronounced. So it's like a sick magical spell. So it really takes some practice and some work, believe it or not. I know this sounds really weird, to become a natural person next door. You kind of got to back off of it and say, all right, I'm not a voice actor. I'm just me. And then you just kind of talk like I'm talking to you right now. You have to pull back. Voice gets a little lower in volume. You're not pushing it out. You're not trying to sound deep or authoritative or confident. It takes a lot of practice to be that person next door, but there is a lot of work for it. So learn it and do it and know how to do it when you're asked to do it. All right, so the announcer or show host, and this is the chest, they want you to pop out. They want you to be a superhero. They want you to be larger than life. You're the star of the show, the boss with the sauce, the master of ceremonies, the larger than life presence with a strong, powerful voice. Now, improv training helps tremendously because whenever you're at a live show or any type of show, even a pre-recorded show, things happen, mistakes are made, and you have to roll with it. And people love to laugh about that kind of thing. And if you're the kind of person that can make people laugh when mistakes are made, then they're going to love you and they're going to hire you for everything. You're going to come back and get a lot of work that way. So, the spokesperson, this is the person who pretends they completely believe in that product or service, and they're paid to convince you too that it's the greatest thing in the world. And you might be on camera or off camera when you do this. The voice actor needs to be super confident, driven, charismatic, and above all, believable. You need to be a good enough actor to make people believe that you endorse a product, that you completely 150% believe in a product or service that you actually hate in your real life. You need to be that good. So think of something you completely despise and then practice talking nice about it. It could be a person, product, service. I don't care what it is, a book, a movie, an actor, music. And then practice talking about it as if you love it. And that, to me, is the best practice you can have as a spokesperson. That shows your true acting chops. If you could become believable doing that, you can pretty much do anything. So the narrator or documentary host, this is the storyteller. Like kind of a laid back, not really a guy next door, because you need to be more confident because you're the authority here. You're telling the story. You have to engage your listeners with tales or facts about some famous person, place, or thing who's alive or historical. And this is where your cadence comes into play, with a lot of beat changes depending on where the story's going. So documentarians are actors as well. So you need to make people believe you're totally into the story, and that's what's important. And if they don't hang on to every word, it should feel like it's a FOMO moment. They feel like they missed something. They feel like they missed out. So you need to be convincing enough to make that story so interesting that they want to hang on to every word. And then there's the teacher. This is the straightforward, no nonsense, no acting voice work. Still, you need to be super confident because a teacher needs to be an authority figure or they won't believe you. Just like I'm being super confident right now. I know what I'm talking about and I'm trying to teach you. So I'm coming across very strongly right now. Obviously, the more engaging you are, the more your students will learn and the more work you'll get as a result of you being engaging. So you vary your cadence and your pauses and your emotion and your volume. Just really shake it up a little bit so it's not this this really monotonous, drawn out, boring thing. And hopefully that's not what this is, or I'm failing miserably as a voice actor. So that's it. The different types of voice acting jobs, the different types of voice actors, the different types of approaches. You'll probably need to watch this one a couple more times to let it all sink in, but it'll all make sense. A lot of it's common sense. But just so you know, the different types of situation that you could run into as a voice actor. So practice some more. You know, the more you do something, the better you get. Some people say you need to do 10,000 hours of something before you become an expert, and that's a lot of hours. So in the meantime, try to find scripts and situations that encompass much of these types of voice acting gigs, characters, and situations. And if you're having trouble finding things, just make them up. Read magazine articles. Blog posts. There's more than enough free information easily available on the internet for you to read and practice your craft. And you should even practice roles that you'd never audition for. Different styles build breadth and depth, and you can always use that experience in the roles that you do want. And who knows, you might decide that after all these years pretending to be a hero, you might actually prefer to play the villain. Who knows? My name is Chuck Fresh. Thanks for hanging out for week 2. I've got some scripts to practice after this lesson, and send them to me. I'd love to hear what you're doing. Share them with everybody if you have the confidence to do that, and let's see where you're headed.